Jane Ripidenera with Legal Services Corporation. Welcome to this morning's Self-Represented Litigation Networks. This is our Forms and Technology Working Group. We do these calls monthly on the second Wednesday of every month at 11 Eastern Time. So for those of you if this is your first call for SRLN, we're at SRLN.org is the organization. We have a variety of different working groups. You can log in and join and select any working groups you want to participate in. There's no fees involved. It's just a volunteer, primarily, run by the working groups, and a lot of good resources on the website as well. So this morning, I want to introduce my co-chair of the working group is Imelda Ramirez, who's with Idaho Courts, and she's going to introduce today's session. We are recording this session today. It's just a housekeeping note there, so we will post this after for anybody who is not able to attend. And also, we will be able to take some questions if you want to there's a function you can either raise your hand or preferably there's a question you can chat, and I'll be monitoring the questions, and at the end of the full presentation, we'll go through the questions and have our presenters answer the questions, and I can also then unmute anybody who wants to have a follow-up or clarify their question, and for any kind of discussion at the end of the presentation. So Imelda, I'm going to pass it on to you for introductions.
Thank you. We had invited Jackie Waters and her colleagues to give a presentation today on their process for making mandatory e-filing possible in the courts. Jackie Waters is the e-court program director at the New Hampshire Judicial Branch, and she is presenting with her colleagues today, Kim Brackett. She's a court service representative, also at the New Hampshire Judicial Branch, and Elaine Lessels. She is the Electronic Filing Center manager at the New Hampshire Circuit Court, and they'll tell us about their process for finalizing the mandated SRL e-filing. Jackie, are you ready?
I am ready. Thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction. Our presentation was first offered at the NACM conference in July in Atlanta. We had proposed this idea, and the NACM committee decided it would be a great presentation, and we were so pleased to have that opportunity. And we've taken that content today and adapted it for this presentation this morning for this group. And we thank you very much for having this opportunity. We have been doing mandatory self-represented litigant e-filing since 2014 was our first go live. And all of our e-filing applications, all of our e-filed case types are mandatory for both attorneys and self-represented litigants. So we thought we would share with you today what we call the 5 non-negotiable success factors for intelligent SRL e-filing. And we'll explain how we launched our first case type and how we continue to build upon that infrastructure as we add additional case types to our e-filing suite. Oops. Okay. Excuse me for that. Okay, so here's what we hope that you will learn today, some takeaways. Again, the 5 success factors, will explain what they are and then how you actually apply them through activities and actions that you might take in a e-filing implementation. We'll explain the solutions and how we used the factors to achieve what we had established as our e-filing objectives. We'll explain how we defined and developed efficiency metrics, and then we'll share lessons learned. So if you intend to or are in the process of rolling out mandatory SRL e-filing, maybe you can learn something that from us that you won't have to learn on your own. So I'll turn this over to Kim Brackett.
Good morning, everyone.
It all began in 2011 when the Innovation Commission, made up of legislators, business leaders, judges, court staff, and members of the public, were asked by the Supreme Court to look at our courts today and challenge themselves to find more efficient and effective ways to serve our public. From that commission came these recommendations. A unified circuit court. We merged 3 courts into one unified court, the District, Family, and Probate Court. Another big innovation was the creation of the Information Center. By centralizing all of the calls that came into each of our 33 court locations, allows the Information Center to answer 70% of the calls that would have been answered by the same court staff processing the cases. This created the best of both worlds, specialized representatives to answer questions on the phone, which allowed our local staff to process the cases with less interruptions and in turn getting those court orders out in a timely way. The next major recommendation that came from the commission, and the one we're here to talk to you about today, was the mandate for statewide e-filing for attorneys and self-represented litigants. And it, of course, in 2012 came all of the planning and implementation for these recommendations. And then 2013, we released the RFPs and eventually selected 2 vendors, Tyler Technologies for our attorney filers and Intrasys for our self-represented litigants. And in 2014, we successfully implemented small claims and guardianships in 2015, and that's 3 case types essentially. It's guardianship of a minor, guardianship of incapacitated adult, and guardianship of a minor with an estate. And that was in 2 separate courts, the divisions, family division and probate division. And then in 2017, we went live with our 2 estates. In 2018, we opened up the case access portal, which was a big ask from our attorneys and our self-represented litigants. And then just this past month, we went live with the Superior Court complaints, as well as the Supreme Court went live for e-filing this past month, I believe. And then looking in the future, we're going to start our work on Superior Court criminal cases, Circuit Court other civil cases. Those will go live next year in 2019. And then beyond that will be our family matters.
Thanks, Kim. So the 5 factors, and I'm just going to read these for you. Have a vision and set the standard. Begin with the end in mind. Engage others from the beginning. Meet the filer where they are, and measure twice. So we'll begin with the first one, have a vision and set the standard.
So the first factor, have a vision and set the standard. Take a holistic approach and establish mandatory from the beginning. This is an important point because every decision you make in the process will be based on mandatory e-filing. Good enough is not good enough when you have mandatory e-filing. When you run into issues, and you will, you have to find solutions. Because it's mandatory, there really isn't a workaround. There's access to justice. We have to make it work. Have a strategic vision or risk being reactive. Pressures will come. It will cause you to have self-doubt. When you run into roadblocks, others will kind of pressure you to say, just make it voluntary. But we never wavered. We had a vision from the beginning. We knew we would have court kiosks at each of our locations for self-represented litigants to use. We knew we would train our staff to help those filers when they needed it. A few other important factors that led to New Hampshire's success. Our leadership was at the table from the very beginning throughout the entire initiative. They were not just names on the letterhead. They're helping, listening, and making policy decisions along the way, and continue to do so today. This is critical, especially when the pressures come. We have a 5-year plan with our vendors. Having a 5-year plan with the vendor allowed us to create a working relationship with our vendors. It was a partnership. We worked together to solve the problems. We were improving the product together. We were both invested in the outcome of the particular case type that we were working on and future case types as well. They didn't just build the guided interview and say, here you go. We worked on it together until we could get it the best we could. No solution was implemented that favored attorneys, filers over self-represented filers. And last but not least, test some more. Basically, we wanted to find the issues before our filers found those issues. So we wanted to get ahead of that. We were pretty notorious for testing from our vendors. And this goes back to mandatory e-filing. We didn't want to require mandatory e-filing if there was something that did not work and had the filer could not file.
Second factor. Okay. So the second factor is to begin with the end in mind, and the end is a focus on customer service. So we knew the process of the court needed to change in order for the self-represented parties to successfully e-file. So we evaluated what needed to be changed to help them. We had to look at our business processes. We had to create assistive tools for them. We looked to our infrastructure, as Kim said, we're creating the information center. And we knew it would be a big culture change for the judges, the staff, and all the parties, public. We knew a lot of training would also be required. So we went through business process re-engineering, and we made changes to court rules, and we added some electronic filing rules. And we proposed new legislation. For instance, with the change to a statute, instead of an affidavit being required in small claims cases, parties can file a statement where they can sign under penalties of perjury. So this helps so the parties wouldn't have to print a form, have it notarized, and then have to upload it. We redesigned forms to make them more simplified, and they were made more functional through our vendor's guided interview format. The TurboCourt system generates the required forms. Each screen has frequently asked questions and information on the screen, which assists the filers through the process. They don't know that they're filling out forms as they go. They're answering questions, which fills out the form in the correct place and the correct forms without even the filer even knowing. And this also helps with quality control. There are less errors and less things being omitted. We've found that the attorney filings have a few more problems than the self-represented filings because they can leave things out by mistake, or they might file the wrong form or something like that. We centralized the e-file case processing and judicial review with the creation of the Efiling Center, where staff processes cases centrally for all the clerk's offices in the state. So we have one office in Concord where we process cases for each of the clerk's offices around the state. This standardized the processes and brought efficiencies, and self-represented litigant service and support was centralized for all e-filing case types with the assistance from the Efiling Center and from the Information Center. So all the staff is trained to help parties if they got stuck on a screen or they're having trouble uploading something or something like that. The Information Center staff and the Efiling Center staff help people with that. We created self-help videos to instruct parties how to file. And as Kim said, there are kiosks in each courthouse lobby. So if somebody didn't have a computer, they can go to the kiosk at the courthouse lobby and staff can come out and help them file. We trained e-filing assisters from other state agencies, and also we trained librarians in case they had contact with people who were trying to file. So say if somebody was using the public library computer, and the librarians might be able to help them if they needed it. And as part of the big culture change, we reassigned some clerk's office staff duties to assist the filers at the kiosk. So we retrained them to work both behind and in front of the counter. And this is a page right out of our training manual for the court staff. So we told them this is, it's a big change. So we pointed out to them, it's our job to move to the other side of the counter to assist all e-filers who may need assistance. So enjoy your new opportunity to assist and improve access to justice for our e-filing customers. So that was our biggest change with the staff, and it's going pretty well. And here's a picture just to show you what it looks like. We have some e-filing center staff. and we have double screens so they can use the different programs, and then also in the background there is the information center. We're all together, one big happy family. And then right next to that, the other picture is just to show you what a court lobby kiosk looks like. So we have the computer there available in the lobby, and then we also have scanners. We have instructions printed on the wall. We also have manuals that are out there for people to use, which isn't often needed because the staff will come out and help them, but it's just to show you what it looks like.
The third factor, engage others from the beginning. Don't create your product in a vacuum. Engage as many people as you can. Gather as much information from experts on the particular case type that you're rolling out from the beginning. How New Hampshire applied this factor, we would bring in judges and staff and attorneys to form project teams for that specific case type, and we gather as many issues that they knew about during that case type. So for instance, we would ask the staff, where are the areas in this particular case type that the filers are struggling with, that the parties consistently get wrong? And same with the judges and attorneys. We would ask them the same things, and we would gather that information and try to improve it with our guided interviews so that we could give information or ask the question correctly so we were getting that information. Even after we went live with a case type, we're continuously engaging in roundtable discussions with New Hampshire legal aid, legal assistance, attorneys, and others. These are informal discussions to see what's working, how can we improve now that we have rolled out e-filing and made some improvements, what can we do to make it better? We still have bi-weekly conference calls with the staff and judges, so that we can hear from them from the ground level, how it's going, what can we improve on. Also, our administrative judges actively work in the case queues on a daily basis, so they understand what works and what doesn't. By them working in those queues, they can authentically speak from experience to our judges and staff about e-court and lead by example. The fourth factor, meet the filer where they are. We are all filers. Some of us are more computer savvy than others. Some know a little more about filing a court case than others. Some may not know how to use a computer. Our goal was to provide a guided interview as easy and user-friendly as the law would allow and make something that was difficult a little less difficult. In TurboCourt, there's built-in quality control, as Elaine has said. The filer must enter the information required. This provides the court with the accurate documents and has the filer, there's less back and forth from the court to the filer to get that information that the court requires. It's consistent across the form, all of the forms. To wrap up that point about meet the filer where they are, some filers never have to call or come into the courthouse because they may be computer savvy enough or more comfortable just reading through the guided interviews and reading those frequently asked questions on the side, or looking at the page and just gathering that information. Or some people might just call just to confirm, okay, I just filled this out, did I get that right? And our information center takes those calls daily. Or other filers need more of a walkthrough. So our information center will walk them through screen by screen if that's what they are required. And again, at the courthouse, we have kiosk coordinators there if there's someone who comes into our courthouses and needs that assistance, if they're not comfortable with either the computer or just the filing itself. We're going to go into our website now in New Hampshire, where we built an expansive online self-represented litigant library. So this is our electronic services page. And we have 3 case types for the circuit court that are currently live. We have guardianship cases, small claims, and wills and estates. So if someone were to come into this page and want to know how to file a will, an estate case, a petition for estate administration, they would click on the wills and estate, and here you can see it opens up a long list of step-by-step instructions, if that's what they need, how to file an estate case in TurboCourt, how there's videos if they prefer to watch a video. We also have pamphlets on information and checklists. There's a lot of information here. So depending on what they're looking for or how they want to get that information, it's here in a form of a video or written text. In the interest of time, I'm not going to do a demonstration in TurboCourt today, but what we have done is we've taken some screenshots. So this particular case is a subsequent filing for an estate case, and this filer is filing a inventory. And here is what would you like to file screen. So if someone has a case created already, they would type in their case number in TurboCourt and walk through, select who they are filing, and then here, what would you like to file screen. We've taken all of the filings, possible filings for an estate case, and categorized them. So once you click on one of those categories, it will expand at the bottom to show the filer what they can file in that particular category. On this next screen here, we're in the inventory guided interview, and it will ask required information for the filer to answer on that particular form. And at the end, after they've answered all the required information, the system will generate that particular form along with a checklist and what they can expect next. If there were additional requirements, those would be listed there as well. And you'll see here, this is the form that's been generated. It will have the court name, the case name, the case number, and the information that the filer has entered throughout the guided interview will be listed here. As well as for this particular form, there is it will automatically calculate the values of the inventory. So this is particularly helpful for a filer because our inventory and our accountings can be complicated, and that was one of the things that we learned in the beginning, that self-represented litigants really needed some help filing inventories and accountings, and we found that to be very helpful for them here. Of course, there are exceptions to e-filing. So for our self-represented litigants who might need an exception to e-file, in each one of our guided interviews, there's a screen that pops up that says, caution, electronic filing is mandatory by court rule, but it may not be for you. So if you would like to request an exception to e-filing, they could click on that link to get the form and fill it out and mail it to the court, or they can call the information center and request an exception to e-filing, or they can walk into a courthouse and get that exception. They do not need to go online to get that exception, but it's here for them in case they didn't know that option existed. The exceptions are ruled on centrally, so throughout the state, so that they're ruled on by a few of the same judges, so it's consistent. And now more than 50,000 cases in our e-court system, we can say that fewer than 1% of the parties involved in our 3 case types have requested an exception to e-filing.
Thanks, Kim. So the 5th factor, we call this measure twice. So the intent here was to identify some metrics that we could establish before we began the e-filing case type, and then we would measure after go live and periodically throughout the year. We were trying to identify the impact on court operations when if a case is e-filed, and also what is the court user satisfaction level of the experience. So we applied this concept to the time to disposition metric, the request for excusal, and also some more subjective self-represented litigant surveys. So I will show you some of those metrics. So some of our statistics, we have quite a bit of data on small claims since 2014, for example. We show a 22% decrease in the time to disposition. For the guardianship case types, it ranges on the lower end of 9%, but not bad, up to 72% on a guardianship of a minor with a estate or estate only. Wills and estates we've just launched that. It's been about a year, 8%. We're looking for opportunities on how to improve that metric. And as Kim already mentioned, less than 1% of our e-file cases begin with the request to opt out. And this is a number that we were surprised and pleased by. We had heard that many would be wanting out of e-filing, but that has not proven to be the case in New Hampshire. And just to establish some sort of a baseline here, about 15% of the circuit court cases in New Hampshire are e-filed, but by the end of 2019, I expect that to at least double. So our self-represented litigant survey was done by using email addresses for the e-service recipient addresses that filers must register, and they're required to by the court rule. So we utilized those email addresses and sent out a self-represented litigant survey. The first simple question is, what was most helpful? We took all of those results and categorized them in 3 main areas: easy to use, convenient, and intelligent. So the feedback that we received is we found the system and the process to be straightforward, user-friendly, intuitive, and self-explanatory. Some other things that came up that surprised us a little, we hadn't really anticipated it, but easier for the disabled, less intimidating. They really appreciated email notifications. We hadn't realized how helpful that is to people. And we did get quite a few comments about helpful staff. And I just want to tell a little story is that actually one of our filers emailed the governor after speaking with one of our Efiling Center representatives about what a great experience it was to talk with this individual. So we couldn't have been more proud of that experience.
And then yesterday, I just got another rave review about the helpful staff, and how somebody said it was just like a friend helping me out, but they're really helping them e-file. So I thought, yeah, we really have pushed that training, and they're great.
That's great. Okay. And finally, intelligent. So this is what we refer to as an intelligent guided interview method. That's the one that we had set out to implement from the beginning, and we firmly believe in using intelligent guided interviews. They're step-by-step. They're prompt, speedy, efficient. The feedback is easier to track documents and records, and the forms are easy to use. So if you ask what's good, you also have to ask in a fair manner what also needs improvement. So we got some feedback on instructions, on the notifications, and on party access. And we did take this feedback, and we have implemented changes since receiving it. So we have clarified instructions and steps. We provided more information about more uncommon filings. We explained about the uploading process in a little bit more detail. We also changed our email notifications to clarify their meaning. We provide reminders about cases, and we provide case status updates as well. And finally, as mentioned earlier in this presentation, we provide party access portal. And what this allows is our case parties who pre-register to utilize the portal, they have access to all the documents, the non-confidential documents that were filed in their case from any location where they have internet access. So this is not available for the general public, only for registered case parties. Finally, if we could do it all over again, I think I'll just start with this, and then Kim and Elaine will chime in. Better methods to involve self-represented litigant e-filers during the case type implementations. This is a real challenge, and I'm not sure how we're going to resolve it, but we continue to figure out how to involve self-represented litigant e-filing filers as we develop our case types. And the second one that I'm kind of near and dear to my heart is establishing those before and after measures in the beginning. Since one of my responsibilities is making a case to our state legislature about why we need more capital money for our program, having metrics in hand is very, very valuable and useful. Very compelling stories are told with those metrics.
And the next one is to simplify the process and design your guided interviews carefully. So at the beginning, we were thinking, oh, we'll give them all this information. We'll give them a whole list of things that they need to know about small claims. But we found after that if you give them too much information, there's too much information on one screen, it might overwhelm them. So we tried to simplify as much as we could and not make the questions too complex to lessen any confusion.
Another one is evaluate the processes to anticipate and reduce incoming filer support calls. So this is something I mentioned earlier, and we continue to gather information from our information center and our electronic filing center to ask what are the areas that our filers are struggling with and how can we improve them. And one area that we had to improve early on was exhibits. At first, it was mandatory that they were electronically filed, and we found that was hard for filers, and it was also hard for the judges. Exhibits were too cumbersome, and the system couldn't handle it in a way for the filers and the judges. So now exhibits are filed in paper. They are no longer mandatory, and that's worked well.
So in review, how to succeed in mandatory self-represented litigant e-filing. Start with the vision. Mandatory from the beginning actually drives success. Redesign your processes and forms and rules to align with that vision. Anticipate culture change. Know how you're going to address that when you get started. Don't address it at the end when you're forced into changing your culture. Engage others. We can't communicate that more clearly. Transforming to a completely electronic-based system requires you to have the enthusiastic participation, or at least try to win folks over before you go live. Design everything with an access to justice as the #1 objective. You constantly have to ask yourself, are there any barriers here that we need to remove? And then finally, use metrics. I've spoken about this already. Metrics help you to understand how to improve. Qualitative and quantitative feedback really matters. And that's our presentation today. And we were opening it up for comments or questions.
Great. Super. We've had some questions coming in. Some of these, I think you may have answered along the way, but just I'll go through them just so that we can make sure and clarify, and if there's any other comments you want to have on them. An early question was what do you do for e-filers with disabilities? Is there anything specific? I know you talked about you got feedback that it's actually easier to use for people with disabilities, or they do have the ability to ask for an exception. But have you done anything specific with that community?
A couple of times we've heard from people, people in wheelchairs, so they find it easier because they can file at home and they don't have to come in and go into the courthouse. And
we also have an exception process. So if someone could not file because of their disability, they can file an exception to e-filing, and of course that would be granted.
And they could just send it in the mail.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there specific reasons for exceptions, and is it stated in a statute or rule?
Yep, there is a rule in our e-filing rule that has some information on exceptions to e-filing. But basically, if there's some sort of barrier that is stopping someone to access justice, they can file. So if they can't drive, they don't have a computer, they can't drive to the court for some reason. I mean, all of those reasons they can put the exception, and if they're granted, generally speaking, for good reasons.
Yeah, I think we have some information from our administrative judge, Judge Kelly, who's been with us this project from the beginning. And I think most of the requests come from incarcerated persons who are automatically exempted from e-filing.
And we put after that, there's a rule now so incarcerated individuals don't have to request an exception; they're automatically exempt. As well as minors and wards, they're automatically exempt as well, so they don't have to request. But in the beginning, I think they did.
Okay, great. Let me see. We had and now, how many people staff the info center, and how many staff the e-file center?
I believe the Information Center has 32 people answering the phones. They answer all the calls for everyone in the state. And then the E-Filing Center has 24 staff.
And I was curious, what has, you know, what is kind of job satisfaction of the staff? How has the staff responded to it being more kind of in a, you know, helping people with the process? You said you've gotten some good feedback from them, and have you surveyed them in terms of how they feel about the change?
No, we haven't surveyed them, but they seem to like it. The only part that the people at the Information Center and the E-Filing Center, they just don't have face-to-face contact. But other than that, it's very similar to being in the clerk's office, except, you know, so.
And then out in the local courts, we have kiosk coordinators. So that was a position that they applied for. So people interested in more of that customer service out in the lobby, they applied for that. So, and that's been working well as well. But it's a training issue, and it's constantly a training issue in that shift.
Yeah.
No, correct me if I'm wrong, too. I also think that when positions become available for, in fact, when it was E-File Center was first set up, it was volunteer basis to ask anyone who was interested in moving into that kind of a role. So, and now vacancies come up again. It's an internal process. So, I think it hasn't been hard to find staff who are eager to move into the more technology-based, customer service-based kind of roles. By offering that, yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Let's go through some more of these. How complicated is it to get fees to individual clerks' offices when everything's processed in one place?
Fees?
Fees.
Did I hear you right?
Oh,
yes.
It just goes it goes into our case management system automatically, so it's even less of a manual process where before people would mail in a check and you'd have to process it and give receipts and do all that. Now it's all internal behind the scenes. We don't have to process each one of those. It just the way the system was set up, the payment comes by a credit card through the e-filing system right into our case management system, and it's less manual processing.
Okay. And is the other question is how is the case status sent out? Is that also automated in the case management system?
Yes. So the parties receive an email when their filing is when they submit their filing. They get an email when their filing is accepted or rejected for if it was like say if it was filed in the wrong court or something like that. They get an email. They also get an email with any court orders or any hearing notices, and they get an email when any other party files something. They get a copy of whatever's filed.
And they also get a reminder if they started a case and haven't not finished it. We'll remind them after. It's automatically a reminder after I think 7 days that says, you know, you have a case in process but haven't finished it.
Yeah. What now? You mentioned because somebody asked a question about I think you've mentioned the name of the vendor for the SRL e-filing. You said it's Intersys that makes Turbo Court. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
Intersys.
And then you have Tyler for the court case management system. Did I hear that?
That's right, Tyler. That's right. Tyler Technologies has a case management system we've been using since 2007, I think, called Odyssey. And then there's a connecting piece, if you will, also provided by Tyler Technologies. That's called File and Serve. And that enables Turbo Court to talk to Odyssey. And that's why everything automatically goes into the case management system.
Okay. All right. That was you answered my next question was how did they integrate with each other? So
right. It was very exciting. When we first went live, we were very excited that the cases would go right into the case management system, no manual docketing the case, adding all the parties, adding all the documents. It was awesome.
And what do you use for the party access portal? Is that part of Turbo Court? Is that part of Tyler? What is used for that?
Yes, that's a great question. That's another product from Tyler Technologies. Since it's a view into the case management system, Tyler provides that. And the security and the controls of it are driven in part by Odyssey, the case management system.
Okay, great. Let me see. We've got a number of other questions to go through here. Would New Hampshire be interested in creating a report to use in other states, noting kind of the metrics and savings, so that other states can use that for helping when they're seeking their own funds to do this type of project?
Sure. If the person asking that question wants to contact me, that's perfectly fine. I also wanted to share something with you. I don't know if you can see my screen, but we recently put some metrics up on our website, and I'm trying to recall now exactly where they are, but I can send the link. We put all our court data on our
Home, I think you go home.
Thank you. It's so new that I
Data and reports on the right-hand side. Under,
okay.
I think that's what you're looking at.
Yeah. One up.
One up. There you go.
Down.
Under there, yeah.
You keep skipping it.
But it's not. It's there it goes. Okay.
From the hand.
Sorry. I'm sorry. So we have, this is where you can get any information about that we have as a publicly available data. And I think we also, for example, have, here's some of our e-court data, which you can see on this screen. And as this information is updated, we update here. But if anyone is interested, certainly email Jackie Waters, and we can, I can help you out.
Okay. I will. I'll chat your email address in there too. That was Charles Dyer from Washington State who was asking that, so he may be reaching out to you about that. Let me see. Does New Hampshire allow for e-signatures on the filings? And also, do you have any information on how many or which jurisdictions allow for e-signatures on filings?
Our electronic filing. Our electronic filing rules state govern our e-signatures per se. So yes, we do allow e-signatures for our filers. And if you go to our website, maybe Jackie can get us back there, and I can show you where our electronic filing rules are and the e-signatures if anyone's interested in looking that up. Over on the left-hand side, electronic filing rules right there. And then e-signatures are, I think, Rule 8. Yeah. So we have one up. Yeah. Oh, 7. Keep going down. 7. Right. Oh, I'm right there. And that states the rules in which we allow for e-filing. But essentially, it's /s/ and the filer's name. There are certain documents where we don't allow e-signatures, and they have to sign. Basically, it's all listed there.
Okay, great. And kind of a follow up about the filing fees. Is there a process if people kind of screw up the payment process, or is that more kind of automated within the system? Like if it doesn't,
it would be part of the review process. So when the filing comes in, staff in the Efiling Center reviews the filing and checks for certain things. You know, is it signed? Did they say they were sending copies to the other party that's required? And did they pay the correct fee? So if they didn't pay the right fee, we could return it to them and tell them how to file to do that.
Okay. And then somebody asked this, are you using Turbo Court for all the case types that you have, or are you also using some of Odyssey's guidance file? And more generally, do you accept submissions from other form automation services or just from the Turbo Court system?
That's a really great question. We use Turbo Court exclusively for our 2 trial courts, the Circuit Court and the Superior Court. We do use a different e-file product for the Supreme Court. We do not have, and this was a decision made in the beginning, we do not accept filings from other filing systems. As you can see in other jurisdictions where the filer can pick whatever system they want to file using, we don't do that. We opted for the model where it's Turbo Court for self-represented and it's file and serve for attorneys.
Okay, and the next question goes into that is why did you go with Tyler for attorneys and the Turbo Court for SRLs? What was the distinction that you used there?
All right, I'll take that one. So the selection, keeping in mind that we were choosing technology back in 2013, 2012. And we contracted in 2013 and went live in 2014. So keeping that in mind, by far we felt that the best product on the market was Turbo Court. The Tyler Guidance file really hadn't developed yet into any kind of a mature product, and we've been very, very pleased with the results that we've achieved with Turbo Court. The file and serve for attorneys we felt was the best product for them. Its integration into our case management system, its simplicity of use, it just all around, especially the way that e-service was working and so forth. So it just made sense. It was the right product, simple for attorneys, easy to integrate. So that was how we made those decisions back in 2012 and 2013. Okay. And we also do, one more thought. We also, since we support, even though these are vendor-hosted applications for the e-filing, we wanted to limit the number of vendors that we have to manage. That's a very key, important thing to us as well. We're a very small state, and we don't have the IT resources to manage many vendors. So that was the other reason.
Okay. Now, when you were choosing Turbo Court, did you look at like HotDocs or A2J Author as other potential, or I'm not sure if they had e-filing at the time, but I don't know if those were in play for anything you were doing or not.
A2J, I do recall, yes, that was looked at before RFP. We floated the RFP out, and it was a very comprehensive 5-year vision of what eCourt was going to be. And in some sense, that may have limited the vendor responses we received. But we selected from the vendors who responded to our RFP.
Okay. There was a follow-up question about the people with disabilities. Is there anything particular for filers that are blind?
I think we, not particularly, we would treat them how we would in paper. So if they needed assistance, we have assistants that, can help them from the court.
Okay. Let me see, there's more.
Like a language line and stuff.
Yeah, there's some more things that are kind of statistic related. So I'm not sure if you'll have these kind of statistics available or not. You say that 1% of all e-filers opt out. Do you have that statistic for SRLs alone, or is that for SRLs alone?
That's just SRLs.
Yeah, that is. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
and then what percentage of all e-filed cases are by SRLs? I guess versus
that's
we
have that somewhere.
Yeah, we do have that statistic, but in one of the quotes that you've provided, we do have that statistic, but while she looks for that, our administrative judge, and I think you passed that.
I haven't, but I will distribute it.
Sorry, but one of the quotes, for small claims, we selected that as our first case type because by design is for the average person to use, and as 95% of the small claims defendants are self-represented, and 46% of our small claims filers are self-represented. But Elaine is looking for the numbers now.
Okay.
That just gives you an example for one of our case type, the percentages that are self-represented.
If I can get that question too, I can email that out to the group as well.
Okay. All right. That, and then let me see. There's some more percentage. Like what do you know what percentage of filings are done without any face-to-face contact versus those people that come in and get assistance and have face-to-face contact? That's probably harder because some of the face-to-face contact might be assistance through librarians or some of the social service agencies. It sounds like you've trained. I don't know if that's something you'd really be able to get easily or not.
Unless we surveyed the filer as they were filing.
Yeah,
have that.
Yeah, because we don't even know. Oftentimes we're reviewing files and we're calling the filer if we had a question, because we try to limit rejections as much as we can. So sometimes we call them and they say, "Oh, I'm sitting here in the courthouse," or "I'm sitting at the library." We don't know unless we call them, because most of the time the filings come in and they're good. Once in a while they upload something that's strange or something, and we call with a question and they say, "I'm sitting here in the courthouse," and we didn't know until we called them. I have the number. I didn't do the calculation, but I have the number. Out of the total number of cases e-filed by the end of September, we had a little over 59,000, and 25,612 of those were filed by self-represented parties.
Okay.
Yeah. Almost 50%.
Yeah. And then somebody asked if are public record requests handled online, or do people still have to visit the court or the clerk to get photocopies?
They're not filed online, but they are either emailed from the clerk's office. I mean, so if somebody goes and files one at the clerk's office, they can email them. The clerk's office can email them, because we also do those centrally. We have the Central Processing Center here in Concord who processes all of those record checks for the whole state. So record checks around, woohoo, we're good.
Record checks. That's right. But you can also go to our court lobbies and get copies of non-confidential documents from the lobby,
and they can print them there from the lobby.
Right.
Right.
So instead of, yeah.
Okay. And let's see. Somebody asked that you mentioned that when going through the guided interview, I think that the Q&A form, the form generation works in the background with the filer, without the filer even knowing, what's being created. And how do you then assure that filers understand what they're submitting to the court and the implications of what they're filing? Like at the end, do they see the full form before it gets filed, or?
Yes, absolutely. And they do know that they're filing something. It's not that they don't know, but the questions are asked for the form, and there's no questions that's asked that they don't need to answer. So depending on that filer's situation, we're not going to ask them 10 questions that really don't apply to this situation. The guided interview is going to kind of guide that particular filer to answer the questions that apply to that situation. At the end of the guided interview, based on their answers to the questions, the forms listed there, and we do tell, I'm sorry that you might not be able to see that well, but we do tell them to review that they're filing, because it is a court pleading. And if they have any edits to make, they can go back into the guided interview and correct those. And they can also save it. They don't need to file it at that time.
And you probably can't see very well, but on here, it says, review these forms, or whatever it says, and then so it's got the inventory of fiduciary form, and over to the side, you could click on it to view it, and then the next one down is whatever that one says. I can't read it either. And then the last one says what happens next, and so they can click on that, and it gives them information about what happens after they submit that filing.
Okay. And at what point in there do litigants know how to introduce attachments into the record? Is that part of the guided interview, or?
Yep, it may be in certain certain circumstances in the guided interview, depending on a question that they answered, the system may tell them at the end of the program, you will be required to upload a, save and attach or upload, depending on what it is, to this filing because you have selected blah, blah, blah. And then at the end of the program, this screen that you're seeing where the completed forms are, below that is attach your documents. And if there was a particular document that was required because they answered a particular question, there would be a red exclamation point there, and it would say required document or required attachment. And they would have to, and there's instructions there on how someone can do that.
Okay, great. Let me see. We only have time. I'll see maybe a couple, like 2 more questions because we're almost out of time. There's still some more questions. Maybe I'll, for anything we haven't gotten to, I can see what else is on here. Let me see. How is service of other parties handled, particularly initial service?
So initial service is done how the statute states that it's done. So for small claims, it's still done by U.S. mail because that's what the statute says, first-class mail. So when we get it electronically, the electronic filing center will print the small claims complaint and any instructions and mail that to the defendant and all parties involved. And in that mailing has instructions on how they must register and file in TurboCourt, or if they have an attorney, to contact their attorney. So that's the same with our guardianship cases and estate cases. The service, initial service of process is different, but that's done the same way.
Okay. And then this is a good question. I'm curious how your system works with 1, parties who need a fee waiver, and 2, parties who do not have access to a credit card or other means of electronic payment.
That's a good one. So we have an option that's built right into the TurboCourt system. If parties want to request to waive the filing fee, they can do that, and it creates the motion to waive the filing fee form, and it creates the statement of assets and liabilities form if that was required for that particular case. Also, there's an option if they didn't have a credit card or if they only wanted to pay in cash, they have that option. We have an option called Pay at Court. It tells people you can pay at the clerk's office
or mail
a check. So those filings just wait in the Pay at Court queue until the parties either go into the clerk's office and give the money or mail a check into the e-filing center or to the clerk's office. Then the filing gets accepted.
There's also an option. There's also an option if they've received an exemption from legal assistance, they can upload that document. They don't have to request a motion to waive filing fee. They're just automatically exempt. One more quick thought on the service piece, because I answered one of them. So initial service is done in paper, and then they're required to register. But after that, they've registered, service is done electronically. So in TurboCourt and in File and Serve, they would select the e-service address of the parties on the case, and they're get copies of everything that's filed with the court.
Super. All right. Well, I think that's we're about out of time, and I think we've gotten through almost all of actually, we've gone through almost all of the questions. So I really appreciate your taking the time today and answering questions for us. And there's obviously a lot of interest in this, and we have the recording. We'll be posting the recording. Everybody's just commenting, fantastic presentation, and thank you so much. This has been really, really helpful. And I think we'll also, if we can get, if there's some statistics or maybe the link to where you're posting your data, that might be helpful. We'll post that as a resource on our Forms and Technology Working Group, so just so people can go find that easily in case they are looking for kind of some information to help with any projects they're doing in their state. So if that works. So thank you. Thank you again. Thanks. Go ahead.
I just say, Jane, I'll take care of that. So you'll hear from me on all of that, and you I'll work with you to get whatever it is that you need. This is Jackie.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. And so thank you to everybody for attending today, and we'll look forward to our call. Will be next month, the second Wednesday of November.
Thank you for the opportunity. I speak for all of us here in New Hampshire. We're really pleased that would give us this chance. We like it very much. Thank you.
Thank you to Jackie, Kim, and Elaine. This has been fabulous. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. Yeah, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Right. Bye now.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.